in a COVID situation where we started off with a humble thought of saying this will be the world's largest retail jam called Retail Parivartan, and we had targeted for 5,000 of colleagues to join on this chat for the next 3 days. I'm so happy that we have 11,000, and I'm sure there are many more going to join. So I must start with thanking all the other supporters, especially IBM, and of course our partners in RAI, in CMAI, and Images Retail, who actually joined hands in making this happen. This panel is very, very exciting. Why it is exciting? Because we are talking of Parivartan and we are talking of change. And in this panel, I have with me Sandip, who heads IBM India and South Asia, a global individual who has seen technology and who has seen what's happening around the world. And if anything is going to make a difference in today's world and tomorrow's world, it has to be technology. So that's the input that we're going to get from Sandeep. And of course, we have Sagar, a young Wow Momo founder who is out of East Zone. So we'll also get a taste of how the Durga Puja is going on and what are the new ideas and innovations happening in Durga Puja. Uh, Avnish comes from Neeru's in the south, which is out of Hyderabad. And I think he and his company and the retail brand that he runs does a fabulous job of bringing out the Indianness of apparel and fashion. So we have somebody who understands the richness of India. We have somebody who's been innovating, somebody who's part of technology. And I'm going to be your host. And of course, wherever I can bring in some of my thoughts, I will definitely do it. Uh, Sandeep, I want to start with you. How do you feel of this whole retail parivartan, which has kicked off, and we are doing the inaugural session? And you must have seen this happening because I'm told IBM has this platform and you've used it for many, many other hackathons and many, many such jams. Okay, so just a 30 seconds comment from you before I kick it off.
So I'll just say one thing. I think I've seen this jam work phenomenally well within the company and also with clients as well as industry events. And I just feel that it gives it just gives a great platform for people to share ideas and the kinds of uh, idea shaping and innovation that I think comes out of it, I've been always impressed with. So it is a great process where I think you can actually get some really ideas which are out there from people who may not be in the industry but are probably consumers. So you will have consumers, you will have users, you will have business partners, you will have people who are running retail outlets. But that I think is the power of diverse thinking and ideas that will come together, and hopefully we'll see some phenomenal innovation that can come out of it that can benefit the industry as a whole.
And Sandeep, the team has come out with the branding and the name which is so apt for the occasion, Retail Parivartan, yeah. And it's all about change, it's all about adapting change. And everything can only happen if we collaborate and cooperate and work together. Yeah. So tell me, what are the changes that you have seen? I mean, I was told by Rajiv, my other colleague, that I think you also landed around January, February. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what are the changes that you have seen around you from a technology lens as well as a head of a corporation lens, both in India and globally?
Yes, I mean, I think there are three things that I always reflect on. Number one, I think with this pandemic, it's basically put aside everything that we thought we knew, and what we had had become experts at, and all the rest of it. And it has forced us to think about the new normal. And within all of this, I think what technology has become, it's become sort of this unifying force. I call it, it's become the sutradhar that is not only keeping businesses thriving and connected, but individually. I think the way we are connecting, the way we are working, I think it has just fundamentally kept us going. But it's also enabled a speed of digital transformation that it's no longer an option. It is something that everyone must do. And the pace of that transformation has just accelerated. I don't think it's going to stop, because I think this now is whatever the new normal is that we all adapt to. That's where it's going. So that's point number one. Point number two, I think the notion of digital ecosystems has become all the more relevant. So typically, and I think the world was moving in that direction anyways, in terms of collaborating with other partners, probably even non-traditional competitors that you are trying to, connect with and create ecosystems where you're creating the 1 + 1 = 5 kind of a model. That I think has become more of a reality, and we need to think about how do we do that. If we see, I mean, I do a lot of work in financial services. We've been doing some of the work with many financial institutions. You see things like what State Bank is doing with Yono, for example, and they're starting to create, financial marketplaces, if you will. So that whole mindset of how do you curate and bring together piece parts to make a higher value offering, I think that whole notion of digital ecosystems is becoming more real. And then the third piece, which I think is more and more relevant, is the use of data in a fundamentally different way. Because I think we are already seeing the phenomenon, and I don't think COVID did anything with this, but the phenomenon that data is becoming more accessible. There are elements of data, which are a lot more unstructured, that are now being we are able to interpret and use them in computers, right? But that paradigm is changing. So the notion that we always had, where data had to be stored and owned and all the rest of it, that is losing relevance, because a lot of this data tends to lose relevance within a few nanoseconds after it's created. So the ability to capture that with sort of this technology wave and make sense of it at the point of decision making, either if it's you're trying to understand the consumer better, or make an offer to a consumer better, or understand where your consumer is, so that you can go and offer them something that is relevant from a retail perspective. So that whole, call it the digitization of the consumer and the industry, I think that enabled and powered by data, I think is becoming very relevant. So that now has taken even a more greater relevance, particularly in COVID, when you are having, issues around social
Yeah.
distancing and getting people together. So those are, I think, the three fundamental areas which
But
I think.
tell me, Sandeep. Again, you can refer globally also.
Yeah.
What are the two changes you are seeing in your employee behavior, and what are the one or two changes you are seeing in your B2B business partners' behavior? I mean, डर लग रहा है? Is there fear? Are people cocooned inside? Are you seeing the mindset? I mean, I'm seeing a change in mindset of less is good. Why need to have more? Okay, so there could be fundamental shift in the way people are going to shop and maybe eat and do what.
Yeah.
But what are the two things you're seeing on consumers, B2B, and your own employees?
So when and I'll sort of talk about the consumers and employees together in some respects. I think the wave I saw, and I lived it, because as you said, I landed here. I was in a hotel room for the last 5.5 months, and now I've been able to move to a house. But what I found is that people moved from this whole, the way we think about storming, norming, forming, and all the rest of it. I think there was a fear factor initially. Oh my God, what do we do? Do we have to be careful? This, that. How will we cope? How will we manage? Never been in sitting in the house. We here, and I think in many other geographies around the world, we tend to be, we like to be in the office. We like to be amongst colleagues. We are in a very collaborative kind of a work environment. So people want to interact with each other, share ideas, and all the rest of it. That I think went from fear to probably a little bit of frustration and getting hold in, to the point where I think one big thing I will say across B2B partners, consumers, is innovation. And basically starting to think, it's almost like, in, we keep saying that invention or innovation comes from necessity, right? So people actually came up with ideas. They start. I mean, one of the data points I'll share with you is in our employee base, and this is in India in particular. 29. I think we have had a 29+% increase in employee education hours that people have done on the digital platform, and people are learning things like collaborative design, collaborative selling, virtual selling. So people have now shifted to saying, how do we now equip ourselves to operate in this new normal? I think that we've seen. The other thing I've seen is some very thoughtful and emotional innovation, where from the groundswell, one of the things some of our employees started out as in the US. Actually, they started it out in the US in one of our design labs, and now it has become a global movement for the company as a whole, is a work at home pledge. So if you think about mentally, right, Today, you are in my home, I'm in your home right now. We are in Sagar's home. We are in each other's homes. The
Yeah.
fact that we are doing that pervasively requires us to have a different mindset. It's okay to turn off your screen when you are on a call because you have children running in the background. It's okay to do. It's okay to block out your time during certain parts of the day when you have to actually take care of household activities. So it is a list of sort of just practical guidelines and a work at home pledge that we have all taken, and we actually went through in each of the countries and others leadership sessions. We actually had people take a work at home pledge and saying this is
Oh,
how we are going to operate. So that is the kind of innovation that is happening. And same thing with business partners. I think as we go with business partners and others, people are starting to operate and say, okay, how do we work efficiently? And you're right, less is more, because in many instances, you don't need the amount of cycles and processes and others that you go through. The efficiency factor and innovation factor, I think, has it
wow.
has just become a second nature, I think.
Great. But Sandeep, we are retailers, and for us, if we are not there on the ground and serving customers, I mean, we are in trouble. So we
Yeah.
can't work from home. Yeah. Sagar, I have heard and seen you do some fabulous things in the last 6 months. But tell me, how did you face COVID, and what are the changes that you have seen around? I'll come back next in the next session to talk about what you did and innovation and things like that. But how did you face? You're a startup, you're a small organization, you're funded, you are great, growing at a breakneck speed. Okay, and how did you face this? And what has been the journey so far on change?
Well, Nagesh, sir, 11 and a half years I was into this business, started with rupees 30,000, never seen losses, never ever seen losses. And comes April 2020 when I see a loss of 4 crores for the first time in my books. So, the tables have turned and the tables are still rotating. But I think we are finding our way out as to where we are heading to. But yeah, it was something which was obviously unexpected for all of us. I think it's a once in a lifetime for most of us. And like I say, adverse time calls for being diverse, calls for being resilient. We came down to 1/10 of our business, from a 18, 19 crore run rate per month to a 1.6 crore with only 40 odd stores open out of the 350. It was difficult, to be honest, with having a huge fleet of almost close to 3,000 people. I think the need of the hour that time was to be very realistic, was to be very candid and transparent with your team. The initial thing that we did, we took a call that we will not do any job cuts because we have reserves, we have profits. For the first 4 to 5 months, I think we went on record to tell our employees that your job is secure. Don't worry about that. I think it's very important to be very clear with your team and be very transparent and give them that clarity and that confidence. So I think that's one thing we did correct. At the same time, it was also uh, about regenerating the entire business, about how can we do things differently, how can we bounce back, because हाथ पे हाथ रख के बैठ के तो कुछ होता नहीं है. And we retailers are very impulse people. We like you said, we are on the ground, we are on the field. So staying at home and being confined, obviously, we had to do it for the first 2 months. It was a normal lockdown and it was a normal norm. But how could we do things differently is, where we started using our brains. How could we sweat our asset better? And, I'll come back to what we did, but I would just want to touch upon one thing that, we were actually delivering real-time hot momos in 35 to 45 minutes, because there are a lot of people who actually depend on outside food. Like, many people don't have cooks at home, many people are bachelors. So food obviously was an essential service. And we felt that, how can we spread our asset better? And one thing I'm very proud of that we created was this new business concept in like a 14-day timeline, So sometime in the mid of April, we decided ki yaar, ye nahi chal raha hai, what else can we do? And we came up with this new business idea called Wow Momo Essentials. We saw that, people were ordering from big basket from grocers and literally taking 24 to 48 hours to get their essentials delivered. We said, yahan pe yaar, hum real time momos deliver kar rahe in 35 minutes. So what can we do differently? And this new business idea of Momo Essentials came in, whereby we tied up with ITC, Procter & Gamble, HUL, Nestle, and all our 45 stores that were open became dark kiranas. And, we were delivering real time from Swiggy, Zomato. And in the month of May, that took up our business by almost 300% from what it was in April. So I think that is the beginning of the innovation that we did. And I'll talk about more innovation when we come to that segment. But I strongly believe that, it's very important to be agile in such times. It's very important to diversify. At the same time, I think it gave us a lot of time to introspect, to see, because all of us, expanding, running, we were running a rat race. I think it gave us a breather to stop, to think, to understand where we went wrong. At the same time, how can we come out of it? So it was like a new challenge. And trust me, now after 6 months, I feel more fired up. I feel me and my company and an organization, we can do so much more that we thought we could never do. And technology has played a very big role. I mean, today I know one thing, one thing become normal. I will still not take 5 flights a week that I used to do earlier, because the Zoom reviews have been far more efficient than traveling all the way and getting exhausted. So that's the big plus to technology from my
I,
side.
I, Sagar, can actually see the energy. In fact, I'm getting some smoke from my screen. Yeah, it's almost like wow, Momo being cooked. Yeah, I love it. But I love what you said, that you can't sit and just think about it. You have to do and act upon. I mean, starting a food supermarket equivalent kind of a business in 14 days, where many of us have spent years and spent millions of dollars getting consultants and then failed. Okay, I mean, even if you fail, I would have said you've done a fantastic thing, but I think you kicked it off very, very well. Let me go to Neeru's. Avnish, tell me, I mean, you are in a business which is fashion, high fashion, ethnic, and occasion led. Yeah, a lot of your business is also marriage, weddings, occasions, and friends and families getting together. The ethos in which you build the business suddenly got challenged. Okay, so, and you are young, you just took over your business from your late father 2 years back, and uh, how did all this come across, and how did you take it as a leader, and what are the changes that you've seen around you, and we'll talk about from there as to what things you have done. But let us talk about the situation and the changes.
To be frank, I think we've all seen zero revenue days, which we never even had nightmares about. So I think if we've seen zero revenue days and zero functioning days, I think if anybody sees this, then anything else is quite achievable, because we realize when you talk about ethnic, you wear the clothes to show people. Now, when you have no people to show to, no events to go to, no weddings to go to, so why is the reason I wouldn't wear a lehenga or a sherwani and sit at my home? So that became a big challenge for us, because all this locking, unlocking, and a lot of other things, that we saw a lot of fight between the bureaucracy and the business. People were trying to understand our business, the government was trying to understand our business, and the way they opened everything up, I think there was a lot of loss of understanding of how especially retail would work, because we were going through we were all, I think, in fact, we all realized that cash was king for the past first and second quarter of this year, and how we all worked on our reserves, and how we all coped up and backed up our businesses with those kind of challenges, especially people like us, because we come from a highly unorganized sector at our back end. When you talk about ethnic and you talk about the suppliers and vendors and manufacturers, so I think the whole ecosystem in ethnic is not as organized as for us. Probably Nagesh ji from Shopper Stop is the most white collared person available, and we always think that how can we achieve that kind of a presence in ethnic. So it was always a challenge, but we at Neeru's, we were very quick in understanding that we have to first be organized and rest can fall later. But coming back to the changes and challenges, I think we all did anything and everything in the past couple of months, like how Sagar told me about essentials. I think same way, even we started making masks in the first 2 months of lockdown, and seeing that, it just gave a push to another product category that just came up, and we never left any opportunity. We started selling on the website. We started tying up with people like Swiggy and like-minded people on the world to deliver all these Neeru's masks all over. So it just gave so many ideas, and people were sitting at home. The whole team was sitting at home. Every day was a new day. There was so much of brainstorming of how to generate cash, how to do business. We all can't sit idle at home. So all that. And coming from an industry of ethnic, where my median age of my old staffers is not less than 10 to 12 years. So those are the guys who have never seen such a period and never asked to sit at home. So, they also sprung up with so many ideas, and to see how this locking, unlocking can be changed, and we can take a benefit out of this particular time. And like you said, there was nothing to show. There was no events, no weddings. Even if the weddings are happening, they're happening in a strength of what, 40, 50, 60 people. So we also realized only the bride and groom were more interested in buying something, and rest of the 30 people said, wardrobe mein to bahut kuch hai, usme se kuch utha lenge. So changing the mindset from wardrobe mein kuch bhi hai usko utha lenge to telling people that, like how Mr. Sandeep was talking about taking the pledge of work from home. If everybody is at home, people like us are going to be suffering. So everybody has to come out. The fear has to come out. We all have to learn to live with it. We all have been promoting as retailers on all together that, we are all well sanitized. We've spent enough money and time and brain and, how to make our stores so equipped that people should be finding it as a healthy environment to come in. And, all these things kept happening. And there were speculations about we are opening up, and there was a huge EOSS period which was going to pop up in July and August. Keeping the track of past 5 years, everybody just wanted to see how we are going to plan. And, is that an opportunity where coming from zero sales of lockdown, can we take some hits on our markdowns and, actually achieve certain number of top lines? So we all as retailers, I think, took our own decisions, although we said that we will try to delay it, but every burden is different on every person. So I think eventually we came up on a very good model where even as Neeru's, we sort of figured out a lot of ways and took a lot of hits on our markdowns and handled our discounting very well in the past three months, especially the months of July, August, and September. And first 2 months, I think after the work opened up, we started going to office. I think the only thing on every retailer's mind was the biggest expense on their balance sheet was rent, rent, and rent. Because malls towards one side and high street towards the other side, I think even if we are at Neeru's 50, 60 stores, I had the weirdest
I
conversations with all the landlords.
I know, Avnish, and we can have a separate session on the rental and the discussions with landlord and
Yeah,
negotiations. Yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah.
let me come to some of the lessons that I'm seeing from all of you, and for the audience. I mean, very clearly, I'm seeing the resilience of the leadership is extremely critical. I mean, the leader can just not buckle down. Okay. The second is the passion. I mean, the two of you, the way you're talking is so passionate. And I saw Sandeep smiling and concentrating and listening to each one of you. So I think that's also important. The entrepreneurship, you can't give up as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And even in these turbulent times, you can see the change around you, and you are the reason for the change. So that's very, very positive. I like the positive way that you all have looked at the business. Avnish, I want you to quickly in 2 minutes tell us about, if we have to look like one of the sub segment that we're taking is richness of India. Okay, and you do a lot of sourcing, you do a lot of Indian ethnic work, where this real Indian karigari which goes in. The Indianness of a garment comes from what you do. If I had to say, Avnish, define richness of India. Okay, how will you look at richness? What all richness do you see in India apart from the work that you're doing? You can talk about that also, your karigars and your sourcing in a short 2-3 minutes.
I think the first out of this lockdown and the whole pandemic, we've always realized India is best in its three F's that it ever performs. I always say it is face, fight, and forget. So India is always, as togetherness, the richness of India comes in the diversity that we hold. So we always face it. We have the strength and immunity to fight it, and a lot of media and a lot of other people that help us forget it. So I think this is the beauty of India when we begin with things like this. And when you talk about our subject, like you mentioned about the people who are there, India is all about, I think as an ethnic person, I can tell you, it's all about the craftsmanship. I think the art in the hands of the people. And as Neeru's, we did a lot of tricks in our business in the past so many decades. I remember when we used to take a yarn from a certain city, dye it in a certain city, and then finish it in a certain city, because the beauty of every place in India had that depth. As Neeru's, we wanted the best yarn available in one place, and then we wanted the best color. If we wanted the red, we wanted that particular red, so it was dyed. Probably the yarn was taken from Salem, and the dyeing was done in the waters of Kanjivaram, and the finishing was done in Bombay. So that kind of strength that India holds. And every city has its own beauty. The richness of India is every 100 kilometers there's a different setup that's available. So probably like Sagar comes from Calcutta, there's huge embroideries coming from Calcutta. There's China of India, which is Surat. There's a hub of printing, which is Jaipur. Hub of cottons, which is Ahmedabad. And hub of fashion, which is Delhi. So every city has its own beauty, and every 100 kilometers gives that richness. So to sum it all, I think the craftsmanship that's available in India makes what India is all about. And if there is one force then that can make all this into one organized basket, I think nothing can stop India.
Oh, I think that was fantastic. I mean, the diversity that you brought in such a simple way. I love that example. I never realized after 30 years that actually you pick up a yarn from some time and you died. And I love that you said the waters of Kanchipuram. I mean, it's that water also has an effect on the dyeing. I mean, look at the
Yes.
richness and the way you look at it. Yeah, but India is just not about artisans or fabric or garment. India is also very, very rich about culture, our heritage, our spirituality, and I think all this put together makes a huge difference. And
Definitely.
richness of diversity and the richness of youngsters and talent is again coming as a very, very big thing. And Sandeep, I just want you to talk about a few minutes of how do you see the richness of talent in this country. We are young, we know demographically, but in terms of the talent and its richness, I'm sure you'll be able to talk because you have thousands and thousands of people employed within the country, and I'm sure Indians who are going outside the country, like you.
Yeah. So look, I mean, we obviously have a very large employee population here in India, and they serve both. I mean, we literally live by the premise that we are in India for India and then for the world, because we run a very large export business out of India as well. So it's a fairly diverse population. So clearly the as I told you, there are two elements that I saw that sort of where the talent factor came out loud and clear. One is the example I gave you, where people, I think, started to pivot towards what they had to do to sort of start becoming more relevant, not just for their own education and so on, but actually more relevant for clients, because we serve clients on a daily basis. So making sure that they were skilling themselves appropriately and pivoting to new ways of working and thinking, so that they were being more relevant and valuable to the clients. We saw that. The second thing that we do is we do a fair bit of our CSR work is in education, and it's basically equipping. We refer to this notion. Our current chairman, she had sort of started this whole mindset that we are going to be seeing new collar workers. So it's not about in the technology world. It's not necessarily always going to be about how many degrees and others you have, but how do you hone inherent technical talent and sort of drive that. So along the lines of our prime minister's uh, push around making India the skill capital of the world, we have been actually infusing artificial intelligence education, for example, quantum education, for example, at the high school level. And some of the innovation I've seen come out of that has been just amazing, because what we end up doing is we sponsor coming out of 11 12, for the CBSE curriculum. We do that in several hundred schools around India. And then we sponsor a hackathon. And some of the innovation that has come up in those hackathons from kids who are actually in classes 11 and 12, and we then took them as interns into IBM. So this is the we've been doing that for the last few years, but this year we actually sponsored almost 25 plus teams in a 3-week internship where we were doing everything virtually. So it was a virtual internship where they were actually building products. We are actually now helping them to sort of productize it, patent, if some things are patentable and so on. But that is the richness of talent that I see that happens at the groundswell. We also do work around STEM education, which is sort of the whole technical groundswell, and that is actually at a high school, middle school level. And I think in my last town hall, I had this amazing, brilliant young girl who was, I think, 12 years of age, and she was learning coding. So this is the power that I see that we do have in India. I think what people need is, I think that this pandemic thing has actually accelerated the whole notion of people wanting to use time to educate themselves and become more relevant, more technical, add more skills. But also, I think if we give people that channel to build and hone that talent to become more relevant, I think in the world, I see that amazingly in India.
Sandeep, you've given me a very good segue into the next segment, which is fueling technology. And who better than you? Tell me, this COVID and the current technology that we have, what are the things that can really fuel the country, the world, the humanity? Because there's been a lot of suffering, okay? And people have also had challenges in their lives, losses of job and things like that. But what are the technologies that you see today? Or if you imagine technology which can really make a difference, and if you think some of these technologies can make a difference to retail, then just share about fueling technology.
Yeah. So I think, look, one of the segments that has been really hard hit is the small and mid-market enterprises, some of the smaller retailers and others. I think technology today is at a point where you don't need to have, large data centers with big servers and others. Everyone doesn't need to have that. We have the ability to pivot towards cloud-based technologies, which gets into more of a consuming technology as you need. So in a simple word, people, there's a lot of discussions around cloud technology and others, but this is about consuming technology as you need. I think that in this new environment is going to become more and more pervasive. For large companies and large enterprises, it's all about how do you become more efficient? How do you actually use it for continuity and resilience planning and so on, and drive more efficiencies in your overall infrastructure base, and looking at hybrid technologies. But for small and mid-market enterprises, I think this allows you to operate in a solutions as a service, software as a service kind of a model that actually allows you to pivot to that technological revolution, right? So that's one technology that's very relevant. The second is what I talked about earlier, is data and artificial intelligence. And that today, I think, is it. And our chairman, actually, our CEO, recently said this very well. Every company in the new era is going to become an AI company, not because they can, because they must. And they must, because that is what is going to fuel the ability to understand consumers better, to be able to make offerings and others better, but also to connect with consumers who are becoming more and more digital. It's not about today, and Rajiv and we become good friends. I always tell Rajiv that it's not about what the next retailer or what the next best retailer is doing with your consumer. It is what is that consumer experiencing in the digital world, irrespective of who they are interfacing with, whether it's a bank or anyone else. And that becomes really important in terms of leveraging data and AI. And it's not just for retailers. I think one of the things we've seen in the pandemic, and we've actually talked about this elsewhere, with ICMR, we've actually one of the first CSR artificial intelligence apps that we launched, and I think it was one of the first ones that was approved through the joint PM Council, is actually equipping frontline workers who were out in COVID-ridden zones where they were actually doing work and testing and all the rest of it. This was a AI-based app in English and Hindi, right? And I think we are adding more and more languages to it, where they could actually start to get queries answered and so on and so forth. And that technology was also replicated with weather data for farmers to understand how do you do irrigation and so on. So with all of that, I think in the retail world, understanding the consumer better, being able to be very specific about making the next best offer and others, and keeping them connected in a way where they see a brand relevance with the retailer in a fundamentally different way. Because I mean, I agree with Sagar, Avnish, and you that you want people to be out in the retail stores. As a matter of fact, I'm big on that. I always many years ago I worked. You may know this retailer with Filene's Basement in the US, right? And we developed a merchandising system for them. And and I talked to the actual merchandisers, right? And they said you need to have the touch and feel. They kept talking about the touch and feel, and they actually took me in the warehouse to show me what that meant, touch and feel, around where they would send the product to what store and all that. I believe in that, right? But in the world that we are in, that is going to slowly come through. And so, in the interim, being able to provide that same experience, in the digital world through artificial intelligence and others, I think is very relevant. And as we've been doing stuff with bestseller and others to do exactly that. I think that is doable today at scale, and that is where I think the world is going to move.
Yeah, and also compared to, let's say, 20 years back, 25 years back, when we implemented very large systems, it was all millions of dollars of spend.
Yeah.
I mean, today on the cloud with SaaS and with so many entrepreneurs who are bringing technology, today a Kirana guy can fire off and become a digital Kirana with a POS and a card acceptance,
Yeah.
and invoicing in $3,000 to $4,000, because there are enough entrepreneurs who are willing to do that
Absolutely.
for them. So it's
Absolutely.
very
So I mean, those
interesting
are
as to
those
how
are the technologies I think which are very, very relevant. They make the digitization. I always say it makes digitization today a lot more affordable if you are willing to adopt some of these technologies.
And also, Sagar, if you look at it, do we really have a choice? I'm of not using the technology, because the consumer is immersed in technology. Yeah. In fact, now people are getting meditation app and sleeping app and getting up app, and I think there will be an app which will tell them what you want to dream. You enter, I want to dream about so and so, then you will get that dream. I don't know what all you are doing, Sandeep, to customers, but tell me, Sagar, I want you to address two things. How well have you adopted technology in the last 6 months? Is there anything that new you have done with technology? And then get me into the innovations that you have done, and innovations both in business models, in product, and various innovations that you have done within your company in the last 6 months.
See, like
But technology first.
I've always believed that, earlier it was called e-commerce, now it's d-commerce, right? I mean, you always have to have that omni-channel of physical stores as well as online to work for you to make it a hybrid model, which is a successful model. I think we all are so glued to our mobile phones. And, for us, I mean, I would rather focus more on food tech. For me, food tech has never been about only doing online sales. I think that's very boring. I think the way we've looked at technology is very, very different. What we saw in the last 6 months was our delivery business really thrived. Like I said, now it's at 150% of every numbers for last month. So, when delivery business goes up, your cost goes up, right? So the next thing that you want to work for your business model is how do you reduce this cost? I think one thing that I can proudly say I did, and I'm still continuing to do it, is that I also represent the NRAI, which is the National Restaurant Association of India. So, as a personal initiative, I said, why not create a model where we can bring down our delivery cost? And we tied up with this company called DotPay, which is a B2B company, whereby consumers can actually order through WhatsApp. So every restaurant will have a unique WhatsApp number. And, you just type a hi or a wow to that number. And you get the real-time menu, the catalog to you of that particular restaurant. And you can order online. And then we've tied up with third-party aggregators like a Delivery, Dunzo, Shadowfax. Now, these guys charge you a $30 for 3 kilometers, $35 for 3 kilometers, vis-a-vis to us paying, 20% to Swiggy. Now, see, a Swiggy or a Zomato is good for discovery, right? But when your brand is already known and a consumer wants to order, on an AOV of 300 rupees, we end up paying 60, 70 rupees. Here, the entire circle is completed in 35 rupees. So how do we work on saving delivery costs was the core agenda that I think I put a lot of focus on. And now I can successfully say that, 43 restaurants across the country are using this. Wow Momo is using this. The consumers are being able to order through WhatsApp. So, and WhatsApp is something that we all have on our phones. I mean, today, if I want a consumer to have a Wow Momo app, it's very boring. How many apps would you have on your phone? So WhatsApp becomes.
One minute. You said you thought of this and then you gave it to the industry through the association.
Yeah, I said, let's all benefit through it. The entire fraternity should benefit through it. I mean, the entire restaurant sector. And also, we needed volumes and scale. Today, if we have to, I'm not saying we want to compete with a Swiggy or a Zomato, but if we have to coexist and create an alternative platform, which is more cheaper, we require volumes, we require depth. So, personally, myself, along with a couple of guys from the industry, we worked intensely on this during the lockdown. We managed to create a platform where, it's our own platform without an app, where WhatsApp becomes the medium of ordering. And, just like what WeChat is to China, I think, in India now we need to start using WhatsApp that for India. And with Reliance's and association with Facebook, you will see a lot of this more happening and growing. So we said, as a restaurant fraternity, and I mean, at least personally, I've always been ahead of the curve. How can we try and grasp this thing and get into this? And I think it's worked phenomenally well for us, because I am seeing delivery costs come down in the last 1 month with just, a trial of 100 stores. And the consumer wants to directly come to you, and today, if I'm saving cost, I rather give that benefit to my consumer. And here I'm owning the customer, it's about knowing my customer. I have the entire database. I mean, through an aggregator platform like a Swiggy, Zomato, I don't even know my customer. So, it's about getting Atmanirbhar, as how I would put it.
Sagar, tell me one thing. You use the word with Reliance and WhatsApp and Jio coming together.
Yeah.
A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of businessmen are fearing this whole combination of the behemoths of the world getting together. Okay. And you are seeing this as an opportunity. Okay. Just express a little more about how you see this as an opportunity.
See, I think it's all about, it's all about setting trends, it's all about today, had the e-commerce trend not settled into India, and had, our industry, the food industry or the essentials industry not moved into online, survival in the lockdown would have been so difficult. I mean, today, all of us during the lockdown, we could order online and survive, right? Whether it's essentials, whether it's food. I think, we need, change is a constant. We cannot be averse to change, right? And every change will bring in an opportunity for every sector. I think you need to take this up like a challenge. And I want to address this to businesses who are actually getting scared of big people coming together, because, you have to look at it as a challenge, and you have to find your way of thriving in this and surviving in this. I think trends are going to change. You will see the advent of e-commerce and shift is here to stay, and it's only going to grow. But that does not mean that physical stores will not come up. That does not mean that, we all are going to stay at home and just, I mean, today we all are drained staying at home, and we are talking about moving out, right? I mean, today I cannot think of going out for a day with family and not shopping in a mall, not watching a movie, not eating in the food court, right? So it's a part of our lives. So a hybrid model is here to stay. I think the more we try and, restrict it, I think the more we're going to promote it in a way. So I think we have to have open arms and welcome this new change that's going to come up. You will see WhatsApp becoming the next WeChat of India, and you will see WhatsApp doing a lot of it will become like a super app in a way. You will see it getting into e-commerce in a very, very big way, and it's already a very big part of our lives. I mean, so much of our professional work happens on WhatsApp, to be honest. We have various city groups, we have city meetings, and it's just made life easy. So I think we need to adapt technology. And Sandip, sir, would agree with me on that. At the same time, I have also looked at technology in a very different way when it's food tech. It's not only about digitalization in the tech space. Today we are looking at creating robotic fryers. Where I will not require a man to fry the momo. I'm looking at robotic steamers. Before we went into lockdown, I had a momo vending machine ready. A momo vending machine ready. So in your corporate, in an IBM office, I can have a momo vending machine which can give you real-time hot momos. So, food tech is more to do with robotics. It's more to do with a combination of digitalization, technology, e-commerce. And that's how I think we have looked at it. And trust you me, today looking and understanding that how labor costs can be expensive. And, looking at, how I can automate things, because, cash is the king, survival. So earlier when we would innovate, Nagesh, sir, innovation would be to win new customers, would be to grow, right? The last 6 months have taught us to innovate, to survive. Has taught us to innovate, to survive today, to fight tomorrow. I mean, I'll give you a small example. In the last 3 years, we've been growing at a 50-60% CAGR, and this year with the lockdown and 6 months gone, how do you grow? I mean, you are even scared to open up new stores and invest in capex. But somewhere within us, we said, how can we find a smarter way to grow? A more linear way, a more cost-effective way to grow. So for the first time ever, we tied up with a Cafe Coffee Day, and we set up a shop-in-shop format inside Cafe Coffee Day. So imagine Cafe Coffee Day has 1,000 stores. If I'm putting a shop inside their store, I'm spreading the asset better for both of us. And for the first time, you saw a collaboration of two big brands coming together. And this lockdown is actually going to lead to a lot more collaborations, lot more integrations, lot more mergers between brands. And that's the way to grow forward. I mean, we need to hold hands and grow now to keep growing, but find our own route and our own way of continuing to, so we already have some 24 Cafe Coffee Day outlets open during the lockdown. And it's giving us good revenue. It's giving us multiple points of sale, more visibility in the app. It becomes like a cloud kitchen. You want to call it a dark kitchen. You want to call it availability on the app. Ultimately, the sales have to happen. So, if your product has a trust factor to it, and the demand is there, the consumer is going to ask for it. You just have to change your platform and your medium of delivery of it. That's it.
I love it. I love it, Sagar. I was just thinking, why do people love street foods? Because they used to say, there's always a little bit of dust which comes on it and things like that. You're going to make it so clinical with the robots behind frying wow momos. Oh, wow, yeah. I love this. I mean, I and you should have a chat just on your energy and wow momo preparations. Avnish, I think you raised your hand. You are excited about the way technology is getting used. So touch on two parts of it: the use of technology, and also in the last 6 months, have you seen some innovation happening within your organization around you, which you think has really sparked business or sparked customer satisfaction or whatever?
So I think when Mr. Sandeep said that company that he worked for in the US, it was all about the touch and feel. So it just struck to me, who better than me sitting amongst all of us can explain more about the touch and feel? Because nowhere in the wildest dreams, because buying a wedding product for every family in India is more like a ceremony in itself. So reception, Sangeet, and whatever happens, going for shopping for wedding itself is a ceremony for a lot of people. So that touch it, I was just realizing that. But to be frank, Nageshi, I think in the past, what we couldn't do in the past 3 years, we have now drifted towards that in the past 3 months. Because to be frank, as a brand Neeru's, we never took online and e-commerce as seriously. It was there, it might be just about 2-3% of our business, and now the whole target and the whole discussion in the headquarters is all about how to take it to the double digits and make it from 2% to 20%. So we are all figuring out ways for that. In fact, we've also tied up with a lot of marketplaces now, and but we all realize there's a certain ticket value where it goes and gets stuck at. So probably a dress which is from 20 to 50,000 has a different response on being online vis-a-vis a dress which is 5,000 below. So the main, I think the soft spot to be online, even for everybody in terms of ethnic also, was just about 500 to 5,000. So we did a lot of homework on our fashion fusion, and the everyday ethnics is what we call at Neeru's. So we've come up with this everyday ethnics, which is much more comfortable, much more ticket valued, and more about working from home if anybody is, and they feel like sitting at home. And I saw a lot of women wearing their night dress and just putting a dupatta and showing on the screen as if they were wearing a very heavy suit on screen. So there have been a lot of innovative ways from the customers also trying to be presentable on screen. But I just came across a very interesting thing in the past couple of days. I happened to see, I don't know, must have been with others as well, came across a certain movie called Social Dilemma. So how everybody's talking about being on WhatsApp, being on Facebook, being on Instagram, and we as a fashion brand, we have to be seen, we have to be available, people have to see us. So we have our XYZ brand ambassadors as our face of the brands and everything. After looking at the movie, then we happened to do a movie screening time at our office to see this whole movie together with about 20-30 of us who are decision makers in various streams. But the main thing, the reason for me also to learn from that movie was they tried to understand human body and human nervous system, of how it responds to a certain thing, and how they made a human body addicted to it. Likewise, when we sat after the movie, we had the conversation and a very open town hall kind of a thing, where how we can take this into our business and understand our customer and make them addicted to Neeru's. What can you do to make a customer addicted to Neeru's? So everybody had their pointers, and the whole MIS system and stuff like that, and talking about the OTBs for the next 3 months. I said OTB is not open to buy anymore, it is open to breathe now, because we don't know what exactly is going to happen in the next 3 months. So that whole movie, and that coming to our understanding, and how Sagar was more proactive on WhatsApp. We've done everything from WhatsApp catalogs and being digital, and trying to get our stores live on the omni channel, not just with our website, with marketplaces like Myntra and Ajio, Flipkart, and everybody. So we are now live with everybody. The whole fight now is how to get the cataloging process, because in ethnic, cataloging process is very, very, very vast. It's not as easy as denims. It's not just a SML, Excel, and two colors and job is done. So we are trying to figure out.
But Avnish, don't give up on your high-priced items, because you must have read that article that Mercedes-Benz sold 540 cars online in the last 3 months. Okay,
right.
So the average price must be 40-50 lakhs. So selling a 40-50 lakh and a car, okay, getting delivered to your house, And out of the 540 cars, I was told only 50% was taken off the showroom. The balance 50% was direct delivery to home. This is like big basket
Oh my
delivering
God.
your medical items. A lot of things are happening now, and interesting things are happening now. But let me go into my last session. All this at the end of the day, Sandeep, is with people. Yeah, either people are at the receiving end or people are at the giving end, and creating this, whether it is technology, whether it is innovation, whether we are talking of the richness of India, the core is the people who actually are involved. How can we empower our people to make things happen better in the future, especially with technology shifting the kind of jobs in retail? I'm seeing a lot of front end jobs moving to delivery jobs, because everybody is talking of 20% online and 30% online. Well, in retail frontline, there's less growth, but in delivery, there may be much lesser growth, okay? Financial growth and career growth and things like that. I'm sure technology is going to make things more efficient, more productive. So, how do you empower people for the organization, for the country, and for themselves to grow? Any thoughts?
Yeah, so I'll just make a few quick points based on some of the things I said earlier. I think this notion of making the new skills education more available to people, I think is very critical. And I mean, there's a lot going on in the whole area of online education, even because colleges and schools and classes and others haven't quite opened. But we've been following this notion of reset, reskill, and pivot, which we've been using across our entire employee population. And I think people are actually, many folks had actually started to do that already. But getting them equipped for what will be the kind of jobs, the kind of skills that will be relevant, right, in the new normal, I think is really important. So it's I came from, I did a lot of work. I've been doing a lot of work in the financial services space, insurance, and so on. One of the things that I've always maintained is that, in COVID or no COVID, right? Uh, the whole insurance business, and I'm giving you a slightly different industry example, but the insurance business is pivoting from managing the risk of loss to managing the risk of prevention, particularly with data, AI, and others more available. So in that industry, what's going to be really important is it's not that risk itself is going to go away, but a lot of risk will get managed in an automated manner because of the data sets and others that are available. And so equipping people to build services business where you are actually proactively managing the risk of prevention versus the risk of loss, taking claims
Yeah.
versus doing preventative maintenance and so on, that becomes very relevant. I think in every industry we will find, in our own industry, right, we have actually, as I said, the huge amount of learning hours that have gone up, but people are starting to learn new skills, like how do you use collaboration tools to do design thinking virtually across five
Yeah.
different geographies, things like mural, things like, so there are tools that are available, which I think people will have to get more comfortable to use. The understanding, data sets, and this is where I think a lot of innovation will also come in. But that skilling and pivoting to accepting that new normal and the new kinds of work that are going to become more relevant in this world, where there will be certain things which will be automated, but the evolution of the knowledge worker, I think, will become a lot more relevant with data and AI and others being available.
Also, I think as we go forward, the belief that an individual has in himself, herself, the organization, the community, and the country is also very important, because I meet two sets of people. I mean, I'm so fortunate to talk to each one of you who's looking at the whole pandemic as a positive stroke towards moving ahead in a very different avatar. But I meet a lot of people who feel this is the end of life, or nothing is happening. My company is not doing anything, my government is not doing anything. I mean, that cynical thinking has to be burnt with the COVID virus. I think we have to really start looking very differently.
I agree.
And I think leaders are responsible for bringing this whole change and talking about it. And it is not easy, Sandeep, to reskill yourself, especially if you're after 20 years of working, 25 years of working. And especially in our kind of business, which has been only brick and mortar, where the exposure to technology, especially to 80-90% of the people, have been almost negligible, other than now in the last 10-15 years, their own mobile. So I would like just maybe 30 seconds comment from you, Sagar, uh, on in terms of how you see of empowering people, some examples that you have.
So basically, I've always believed that, our population is the biggest strength. We need to be the change that we want to see. And we have a very young population, 26 years average age. So the power of youth is there. And I think that's the biggest asset of our country. Earlier our population was looked as the biggest weakness, like, we were called overpopulated, etc. I think times have changed. I think there's a bunch of talent available in the country. What is required is to empower them and give them that confidence. At least in our organization, we've again been very agile, and we've tried to empower people, being a young organization. I mean, there's a full diktat to my entire team that if you send me an email and you don't get a reply in 48 hours, go and do it. Uske baad, if you make a mistake, I'll take it on myself, because you can't go through the entire mechanism of a hierarchy and actually build a startup from scratch. So I think the need of the hour at times is to move fast, is to be agile, and is to take decisions. And you have to empower people to do that. I think what is more required now is that to mentor people, to mentor the youth, to go out there and do it. One thing I've learned in the last few years is that if I've hired people who've been there, done that, it's not worked for us. I rather hire young people who have that hunger to grow, mentor them, work with them. Yes, it gets difficult, but there's so much to learn on both ways. And I think being open to learning is what I would, is the message I would want to give out to everyone, because the minute you stop learning, or the minute you stop empowering your team and your youth, you're finished.
Open to learning. Avnish, you have 30 seconds. Anything that you want to talk about empowering people?
I think I'll go with what Sagar said, because I think we belonging to a certain age group. I think we all have a similar mindset of. But I totally agree. I think whatever the Prime Minister said in the past 6 months, the only thing I learned from him was the word Atmanirbhar. Because what happens is, in our businesses, I think we get so busy in our day-to-day operations. The whole team gets so busy in the day-to-day operations. There has to be a point where we have to stop the clock, stop ourselves, sit down, close our eyes, and think that, is this day to day my only job, or do I have to do something more creative for my business? So the day that ownership comes into each and every employee of the company, that is the day they are going to take the decisions in a way that this is my subject, I have to give it back. I am the owner of my LFS business, I am the owner for my e-commerce business of my company, I am the owner of the store of my business. So I think that ownership and the Atmanirbhar, that
I,
collaboration of these
I
two
love
things
it.
will make it.
Thank you. I love it because you've actually helped me do the closing remarks. It's just a minute to go. Okay. I think
Hanji.
the whole thing about how can you be Atmanirbhar, how can you bring in the Parivartan in yourself and people around you? Okay. Or at least if you can't bring the Parivartan, be the spark to let people Parivartan themselves and take ownership of situation, whether it is a COVID situation or a situation for tomorrow. Yeah. I think with these words, I would like to wish the next 3 days, all the 11,000 plus people who are coming on our Retail Parivartan chat, a wonderful experience. We were looking at 5,000 registration, we got 11,000. We started off thinking at least if we can get 100 ideas, okay, it'll be fantastic. I think we have more than 30, 40, 50 ideas in this one session itself. If people have to capture it, I'm sure it'll be more than 100 ideas. I'm looking forward to the outcome of the Retail Parivartan and the sessions where we can actually come out with the white paper, which can be circulated to everybody so that the country can benefit. So Sagar, we're learning from you, create something for the industry. So this is something that all of you together have created for the industry. Thank you once again. Lovely interacting with all of you. And I wish you all the best for in your endeavors. And thank you once again. Thank you, Sandip. Thank you, Avnish.